I woke up expecting nothing. That's how it worked in our house. You learned not to expect warmth, even on your birthday. Especially not on your 18th. The room was still. Too still. The kind of still that settles into your bones like a warning. The hallway smelled like burnt toast. Not because anyone forgot, but because my mother always burned it. Said it reminded her of something, funerals, maybe. She hummed that old hymn again, the one she sang the morning we buried Grandpa. It wasn't a tune, it was a signal. Dad sat at the kitchen table with the paper held upside down. Not even trying. He didn't speak, just shifted his eyes when I walked in. Mom poured black coffee like we weren't marking a milestone. We're going on a drive, she said. Grandpa left something at the house. No happy birthday. No card. Just a trip. You don't realize you were raised on conditional love, I remember thinking, until the conditions change. The drive was long and the air was thick. Rain clung to the windows like it was trying to listen in. They said nothing for miles. Mom kept her lips tight. Dad gripped the steering wheel like it could keep him from saying the truth. I stared out at the trees. Grandpa used to say the countryside was honest. Quiet, but honest. Unlike people. He spoiled you with dreams you'll never afford, Mom said sharply, cutting through the silence. Dad coughed. Just do as we say today, sweetheart. Sweetheart. As if that still worked. The road narrowed, gravel spitting up under the tires. The Monroe estate stood like a ghost at the end, sagging porch, chipped paint, windows clouded like tired eyes. But it didn't look forgotten. It looked wiped down. Too clean. Bleach. There was bleach. Go in and grab the box labeled Arthur, Mom said, gesturing toward the porch like she was handing me a chore, not a choice. I hesitated. Dad leaned close and whispered, "Forgive us." That was when the door closed behind me. Hard. A click. Then silence. In that moment, the word family became a locked door. I screamed their names. Nothing. No reply. I kicked the door. Checked the windows, nailed shut. No bars, but it might as well have been a cell. I reached for my phone. No bars. Of course. I paced, heart knocking against my ribs. Then I saw it, a photo, cracked down the middle. Me and Grandpa. His hand on my shoulder. My mother's face had been ripped out. A dark stain near the staircase caught my eye. Rust-colored. Trailing toward the study. This isn't just neglect, I whispered. It's a message. I forced the study door open. The smell hit me first, old wood, paper, dust and something else. Something metallic. The room hadn't been touched in years. Dust motes danced like memories in the light. The desk was cluttered, but one corner was clear. Grandpa's handwriting. My breath caught. A torn note, to be opened by her, and only her. Beneath the floorboards, just under the desk, a faint glint. I pried it open with a letter opener. A small lockbox. Bloodstains led to it, like breadcrumbs from a nightmare. What did you know, Grandpa? I asked out loud. I wasn't crying. Not yet. I was past that. But I wasn't calm either. Just waiting to understand. On the mantel, something else. A wooden comb. My old one. I'd lost it when I was 9. Grandpa used to brush my hair with it and say, "You're stronger than you believe." I picked it up. The words were still there, etched faintly. Somehow, it grounded me. Reminded me who I was before all the silence. Before the shame. I took the handle and popped open a drawer. Inside, an envelope. 18th birthday scribbled in the corner. The house felt heavier suddenly. Like it knew I'd reached something important. I sat down slowly. Broke the wax seal. If you're reading this, it means they've already shown you who they are, Grandpa wrote. The will is hidden where the house bleeds. I looked at the dark stain under the floorboard. Then, a sound. A faint thump above me. Not the house settling. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. I'm not alone in here. If the house bleeds, I whispered, then so do its secrets. I didn't move at first. Just stood there, breathing through my nose, eyes locked on the ceiling like it might answer something for me. The sound had been too real. Not the kind of creak a house makes when it's settling. No, this was measured. Heavy. Human. I told myself maybe I imagined it. Maybe the panic was twisting everything. But then came the second creak. Slightly off rhythm, like someone testing each board. Grandpa used to say, the house talks when no one's supposed to be here. And suddenly, it was all I could hear. I started up the stairs, each step groaning louder than the last, like they were warning the whole place I was coming. Dust shifted at the landing, a smooth patch in the middle that hadn't been there before. That's when I saw it, the faintest sliver of light spilling out from under the attic door. Everything in me said stop. But I didn't. Sometimes, the silence screams louder than any voice. The door was locked. Of course it was. I rattled the knob once, quietly. It didn't budge. My brain scrambled for answers, flipping through old memories like pages of a burned-out diary. Then it hit me, Grandpa's cane. Back in the study, I found it leaning against the bookshelf. I twisted the handle, the way he used to when he thought no one was watching. Click. A small brass key dropped into my palm. I made my way back up, heartbeat pounding like a second set of footsteps beside me. The key slid into the lock. Turned clean. The attic groaned as I opened the door. The air was thick, not just with dust, but with the kind of weight memories leave behind. Old furniture, trunks, newspapers, pieces of a life no one wanted to talk about anymore. And hanging in the air cigar smoke. Faint, but unmistakable. I didn't see anything at first. Just clutter. But then, atop a metal filing cabinet in the far corner, something caught the fading light. A tape recorder. And on top of it, a cassette. Her truth, it said in Grandpa's handwriting. Truth doesn't hide in the dark. It waits. I slid the cassette in and pressed play. The tape clicked, then crackled. Then came his voice. If you're hearing this, it means they did exactly what I feared. Martha, she pressured me while I was sick. Got the lawyer to draft something new. Something that erased you. His voice cracked, but he kept going. The original will, the one where everything goes to you, they destroyed it. Said it was a mistake. But I knew what they were doing. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until my chest ached. I made another copy. Hid it. It's still in this house. But I couldn't protect you once I was gone. He paused. Orlith, you were never the problem. You were the target. Everything in me froze. Rage, sorrow, clarity, they collided so fast I couldn't separate them. I sat there on the dusty floor, the tape still playing behind me. Flashes came, not memories exactly, but little fragments. My allowance always lost in the budget. The way Mom dismissed my college letters. Dad pretending not to hear when she cut me down. I thought they just didn't care. But they did. Just not about me, only what I stood in the way of. You don't notice the knife until you're already bleeding. I wiped my face. Stood up. I wasn't going to sit in that attic and fall apart. Not now. Back downstairs, the study looked different. Not because anything had moved, but because I had. I knelt by the desk, studying the boards beneath. One of them, near the edge, looked slightly raised. I grabbed the wooden comb from my pocket, wedged the handle beneath the board. It lifted easier than I expected. Something was tucked inside. Another envelope. Do not trust them, it read. My fingers hesitated at the seal. The comb brushed against my hand again. I held it tighter. Strength isn't loud, Grandpa once told me. It's unshakable. That man knew who I was before I did. I slipped the comb into my back pocket. Let the envelope rest in my lap for a moment. Then, a sound from downstairs. The front doorknob. It rattled once. Deliberate. Not wind. Not accident. A shadow crossed the crack beneath the study door. I didn't panic. Instead, I whispered, "They're back, but I'm not the same girl they locked in. Let them open that door, I dare them." The moment I saw Denton's reflection in the glass, I froze, not out of fear, but clarity. The kind of stillness that comes when your mind finally settles on what must be done. I didn't move, didn't speak. I waited until the shadow passed. He didn't open the door. I turned back toward the desk. Something about the top drawer had bothered me earlier. It opened too easily. But the panel behind it. That felt different under pressure. I wedged the edge of a letter opener under the trim and popped it loose. A narrow compartment. Inside, 2 thick legal envelopes, yellowed and sealed with brittle red wax. The handwriting on them? Grandpa's. Monroe will, 1992. Amended 1996. I sat down, heart pacing at a steady beat as I peeled the first one open. Legal text, official formatting. But then my name. Orlith Monroe in bold. And a line drawn straight through it. Replaced with unknown guest. My chest tightened. I flipped through the pages, my fingers trembling. Notes in the margins, written in sharp ink strokes, remove upon notice of disobedience. Another scribbled, addendum, remove beneficiary if inconvenient. It wasn't a typo. It wasn't an error. It was deliberate. I was erased on paper, just like I'd been erased from birthdays, from photos, from every conversation where a daughter should have mattered. I remembered a birthday card where my name was covered in whiteout. At the time, Mom had laughed it off, said the card had been recycled. Don't be dramatic. But now. It all made perfect, ugly sense. When they're silent, they're still speaking. I set the pages down and walked to the filing cabinet. Second drawer. Jammed at first, then slid open with a groan. Inside, a thin folder. Labeled, Arthur M., Confidential. One small brass key inside. It matched the shape of the lock I'd seen beneath the floorboard by the desk. I didn't hesitate. On my knees again, I worked the loose board free and found the box. Brushed the dust away. 18th birthday, OM. The key clicked. Lid creaked open. Inside, a leather-bound ledger. Grandpa's handwriting filled every line. Dates. Figures. Property names. Stocks. Accounts. And one entry circled in black, Orlith Monroe, primary beneficiary. I pressed the book to my chest. Like it might prove I existed. Then, footsteps. Again. This time not above. This time on the stairs. My hands moved before thought. I tucked the ledger under my jacket, shoved the board back into place, slid the desk chair over it. If they think I'm invisible, I muttered, let me show them what they erased. I didn't wait for confrontation. I slipped down the side hallway, past the coat closet and the old laundry chute. There was a wall phone tucked in the nook by the stairs. I grabbed the receiver. Dead. Of course it was. But I didn't panic. Grandpa once said, strength isn't loud, it's unshakable. And I wasn't here to scream. I was here to outlive every lie they buried. Back in the study, I placed the legal envelopes beside the lamp. Then I pulled out the wooden comb from my pocket. The words etched into it caught the glow of the desk light. You're stronger than you believe. I left it right there, next to the files. A line drawn in the sand. If they opened that door again, I wanted them to see it. Then, light flickered. The air shifted. The study door creaked. I turned slowly, eyes locking on the glass of the cabinet. Denton. He didn't speak. Just stared. I didn't flinch. You erased me, I said. Now you're going to watch me come back. Because this time, I'm walking out with every truth they buried. After that damn envelope vanished in the study and I stood frozen in the thick dark, I didn't waste another second. Whoever was behind that shelf didn't show their face. Maybe they were waiting for me to bolt, to slip up. But I didn't. I stepped out slow, calm, like I'd rehearsed it. My heartbeat pounded, sure, but I held my breath long enough to hear theirs. Then silence. I left the study door cracked, not fully shut, just enough to suggest nothing had happened. I made my way down the side corridor, the one we kids used to race through barefoot after swimming in the creek. The Monroe Library sat like a tomb at the far end, barely used unless someone wanted to act smarter than they were. I pushed the heavy door open. The scent hit me first, mildew, old ink, a hint of lemon oil from who knows how long ago. The golden light bleeding through the lace curtains gave the room a sleepy feel. But I didn't come for comfort. I was looking for Carlisle Brix's contact list. But instead, right in the center of the reading table, sat the family guest book. Thick. Leather-bound. A marker ribbon frozen midway. I pulled it closer, hands stiff from cold and nerves. I opened it and scanned the entries. Birthdays. Anniversaries. Thanksgiving, 1996, my name in Grandpa's handwriting. New Year's 1997, again, Orlith Monroe. And again and again. Then, nothing. 2002, +1, unidentified. 2003, blank. 2004, all family accounted for scribbled next to my father's name. Accounted for. Except me. I didn't cry. I just stared. Cold inside. Like being erased was worse than being hated. I kept flipping, slower now. Behind the back cover, an envelope peeked out. Brix, final addendum. I opened it. Inside, a scan of a legal page. Grandpa's name scribbled on the bottom. At first glance, it looked right, but the ink wasn't aged, and the signature it didn't wobble like the ones he signed after his strokes. The paper was tagged, processed post-mortem, filed April 7th. He died April 2nd. Even dead, they're still trying to silence him. I gritted my teeth, jaw locking up tight. I checked the drawers of the writing desk, hunting for more. Most were empty or stuffed with dried pens. Then a manila folder, legal reassignments, April. I opened it. Memo, Carlisle Bricks, terminated April 3rd. Replaced by in-house legal counsel. That was the day after the funeral. They didn't just fire him. They wiped him out before the will ever had a chance to breathe. They replaced the gatekeeper before the will could surface. I couldn't stay in that room. The walls felt like they were leaning in. I stepped back into the hallway, swallowing hard, trying to keep the acid in my stomach from climbing into my throat. That's when I passed the family portrait. The one that used to hang in the east dining room. Everyone's in it, posed, smiling, fake as ever. Except me. I remember being there that day. Standing beside Grandpa before they took the shot. He pulled me in, real quiet, right before the camera snapped. Whispered in my ear, I put the truth where only a seeker would find it. I squinted at the frame now. The bottom corner had a strange scuff, no, a carving. An M. Grandpa's cane still leaned in the umbrella rack near the door. I grabbed it and tapped the baseboard under the painting. Tap. Tap. Hollow. I crouched and pressed. The panel shifted. A soft pop. Inside, a sealed envelope. On the front, if she finds this, tell her I tried. My hands shook as I slid it open. Letter to Carlisle. Grandpa's handwriting, no doubt. They're getting desperate. I've placed the real will in the hands of someone trustworthy. Keep Orlith safe. He knew. He knew they were coming for everything. My fingers gripped the letter too tight, creasing the edges. A dozen thoughts shot through me at once. Who had the real will? Was Carlisle still reachable? Then I spotted something on the nearby shelf. Wedged between a Bible and an old atlas, a name card. Orlith Monroe, Seat 3A. The ink was faded, but still legible. Someone had written it with care. I ran my thumb over the letters. I used to have a place here. They can't erase that. I tucked it in my pocket, not because I needed their approval but because I was done letting them write my story for me. A sharp crack of lightning lit the hallway. I turned back toward the window, just in time to see it slam shut. Hard. I spun, heart racing. The envelope, the one from the hollow wall, was gone. Heavy breathing echoed from behind the tall shelf. I didn't move. Just whispered, "Who's there?" A long pause. Then a single, slow creak. I clenched my fists. I'm not the only one reading Grandpa's secrets tonight. I woke early to the smell of rain and wet wood. The storm had left its mark on the house, as if the walls themselves were soggy with secrets. I slipped from bed, listening. Voices downstairs, Mother, Denton, low and urgent. I touched the envelope in my pocket. Still there. Unopened. A reminder. In the hallway light, shadows stretched long across the floorboards. I paused, remembering Grandpa's words, "The strongest sword is the one unsheathed quietly." I took a breath and walked past the study, comb in hand, ready. The house was still waking up, but so was I. Breakfast was served like nothing had changed. Mother called me to the table, her tone casual, but I saw the tension in her eyes. I sat opposite Denton, placed the guest ledger and that tattered letter between us. Mother's hand froze. Denton's eyes flicked away. I leaned forward. Would either of you care to explain why my name disappeared? The silence answered. Teeth chattered in the stillness. I kept my posture steady. No outburst. Calm. The ledger stared back at them, proof I would not dismiss. Lorna sat across, picking at her salmon. Her eyes darted toward me, then away. Guilty. Fear in her movements. She'd been silent too long. I studied her without saying a word. Her complicity spoke volumes. When I thought about her, I realized I might need her one day, but only if she chose truth. Right now, she was only suspicion wrapped in hesitation. Later, I invited Mrs. Audra Keene under the guise of a friendly check-in. She arrived in rain boots and a worn coat, and sat quietly. At the table, she leaned close and said in a low voice, Trelane threatened your grandfather the year before he died. Mother went pale. Denton shifted. I met their eyes. So the record says what I found is just the beginning. Audra nodded. He said he regretted it every day. That moment snapped something inside me. I no longer doubted what he'd left behind. After breakfast I returned to my room. The manila folder labeled Monroe for Orlith was on the desk, waiting. I opened it and began drafting an email to Carlisle Bricks. I have the full will and I'll be sharing it. I knew filing it meant risk. But silence held no power anymore. With one steady breath I placed the folder in my backpack and walked past the locked front door. I stayed on the porch instead of leaving, watching the rain gather like a crowd. I hid the carved comb and Grandpa's cane hat stand near the door. When Mother walked by later, she asked, "Why is that old thing there?" I simply smiled. That comb was my signal, the game begins. By evening I sat on the porch, laptop open, rain tapping the keys softly. I pressed send, Carlisle, originals attached. Behind me, the front door clicked open. I turned. Denton stood there, damp coat, silent. In his hand, an envelope marked your turn. He slipped it in his pocket and locked his eyes on me. Bring it on, I whispered. He didn't respond. The door shut softly. The fight had just begun, but this time, I wasn't hiding. The house had quieted again, though it wasn't peace, it was retreat. After everything this morning, the air still felt charged, like the storm outside hadn't really passed. I walked the corridor slowly, stepped soft against the old rug, drawn by my father's voice leaking from the living room. Not loud, pleading. Just leave it alone for tonight, he said to someone I couldn't see. She doesn't understand what she's stirring up. He hadn't seen me yet. I stopped just outside the doorway, remembering a moment years ago when I scraped my knee on the driveway. He'd carried me inside, wrapped it gently. That was the only time I remember him being tender. I pushed the door open. The room stilled. Merrick turned toward me. Denton stood stiff near the fireplace. Mother was half-shadowed on the couch. They all knew I'd heard. I understand perfectly, I said, stepping inside. I just choose now. I moved toward the center of the room and laid the folder, Monroe, for Orlith, down on the coffee table like a playing card turned over mid-game. Mother straightened her posture. Denton kept his chin tucked but his fists tensed. Merrick didn't speak. You locked me away. You erased my name. Now I walk in. Denton shot up from his chair, palm slapping the table. You're making a scene. I stayed seated. No. I'm restoring truth. I remembered something Grandpa used to say during dinner arguments: he who raises his voice loses his argument. So I spoke low, steady. I let the silence do more than my words ever could. Thunder cracked outside, shaking the windows, like the world was weighing in. I reached into my coat, pulled the carved wooden comb, and held it up. Everyone froze. It was like I'd dropped a lit match on dry leaves. I didn't say a word. Just held it between us all. They stared, every one of them recognized it. Grandpa's. The same one he kept near until the end. It wasn't about the object. It was what it meant. I had what they thought I'd never claim. The room didn't erupt. No yelling. Just a slow, painful folding in. They knew. And then the front door creaked open. Footsteps. Hesitant. Lorna appeared in the entry, her hand trembling as she clutched a folded page. I found this, she said. Under Mom's desk. It's the original guest book. She crossed the room and placed it on the table next to my folder. I didn't even have to touch it, my name was there. Black ink. Clear. Mother gasped. Denton stepped forward like he was going to snatch it, but I cut him off with a look that told him I'd make it worse if he touched anything. Lorna didn't look proud, just scared. But that one move. It shifted something. I stood. You can sit with this truth, or you can keep hiding and watch it all burn, I said. No more whispers. No more doors closed in my face. Either you fix it tonight or I'll make sure the entire state hears by morning. Merrick looked tired. Like all the weight he dodged had come home. Denton clenched his jaw so tight I thought he might crack a molar. Mother didn't say a word. Just sat with her hand on the armrest, grip white-knuckled. I left them with it. I walked back toward the fireplace. Took the comb and placed it gently on the mantel, right beside the guest book Lorna had brought. The carving caught the lamp's soft glow. You're stronger than you believe. It used to be something Grandpa told me when I was too small to reach the cabinet. Now, it was something I'd carved into my bones. I stepped outside into the storm, pulled my coat tighter around me, and stood on the porch. The rain wasn't gentle now. It hit sideways. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Carlisle Brick's calling. I answered. His voice cut through the rain, be ready. They're moving the assets tonight. I stared into the dark beyond the Monroe gates. Let them, I said. I'll be right behind them. Because tonight, I don't wait for them to open the door, I walk through it on my own. The house had quieted again, though it wasn't peace, it was retreat. After everything this morning, the air still felt charged, like the storm outside hadn't really passed. I walked the corridor slowly, stepped soft against the old rug, drawn by my father's voice leaking from the living room. Not loud, pleading. Just leave it alone for tonight, he said to someone I couldn't see. She doesn't understand what she's stirring up. He hadn't seen me yet. I stopped just outside the doorway, remembering a moment years ago when I scraped my knee on the driveway. He'd carried me inside, wrapped it gently. That was the only time I remember him being tender. I pushed the door open. The room stilled. Merrick turned toward me. Denton stood stiff near the fireplace. Mother was half-shadowed on the couch. They all knew I'd heard. I understand perfectly, I said, stepping inside. I just choose now. I moved toward the center of the room and laid the folder, Monroe, for Orlith, down on the coffee table like a playing card turned over mid-game. Mother straightened her posture. Denton kept his chin tucked but his fists tensed. Merrick didn't speak. You locked me away. You erased my name. Now I walk in. Denton shot up from his chair, palm slapping the table. You're making a scene. I stayed seated. No. I'm restoring truth. I remembered something Grandpa used to say during dinner arguments: he who raises his voice loses his argument. So I spoke low, steady. I let the silence do more than my words ever could. Thunder cracked outside, shaking the windows, like the world was weighing in. I reached into my coat, pulled the carved wooden comb, and held it up. Everyone froze. It was like I'd dropped a lit match on dry leaves. I didn't say a word. Just held it between us all. They stared, every one of them recognized it. Grandpa's. The same one he kept near until the end. It wasn't about the object. It was what it meant. I had what they thought I'd never claim. The room didn't erupt. No yelling. Just a slow, painful folding in. They knew. And then the front door creaked open. Footsteps. Hesitant. Lorna appeared in the entry, her hand trembling as she clutched a folded page. I found this, she said. Under Mom's desk. It's the original guest book. She crossed the room and placed it on the table next to my folder. I didn't even have to touch it, my name was there. Black ink. Clear. Mother gasped. Denton stepped forward like he was going to snatch it, but I cut him off with a look that told him I'd make it worse if he touched anything. Lorna didn't look proud, just scared. But that one move. It shifted something. I stood. You can sit with this truth, or you can keep hiding and watch it all burn, I said. No more whispers. No more doors closed in my face. Either you fix it tonight or I'll make sure the entire state hears by morning. Merrick looked tired. Like all the weight he dodged had come home. Denton clenched his jaw so tight I thought he might crack a molar. Mother didn't say a word. Just sat with her hand on the armrest, grip white-knuckled. I left them with it. I walked back toward the fireplace. Took the comb and placed it gently on the mantel, right beside the guest book Lorna had brought. The carving caught the lamp's soft glow. You're stronger than you believe. It used to be something Grandpa told me when I was too small to reach the cabinet. Now, it was something I'd carved into my bones. I stepped outside into the storm, pulled my coat tighter around me, and stood on the porch. The rain wasn't gentle now. It hit sideways. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Carlisle Brick's calling. I answered. His voice cut through the rain, be ready. They're moving the assets tonight. I stared into the dark beyond the Monroe gates. Let them, I said. I'll be right behind them. Because tonight, I don't wait for them to open the door, I walk through it on my own. By the next evening, the house felt different. The storm had passed, but its echo lived inside the walls. I drove back to the Monroe estate just before 7. The long windows reflected the dying light, and for the first time, I saw the place not as a home, but as a stage where lies were rehearsed too well. The banquet hall had been rearranged for what they called a family meeting. White tablecloths. Polished glasses. Cameras tucked discreetly along the walls, just in case they needed to control the story later. My parents stood near the head table, dressed in civility and fear. Denton was already there, pacing, whispering to someone I couldn't see. I walked in without hesitation. Black suit, hair tied back, folder in hand, the one labeled Monroe, for Orlith. I set it on the chair beside the head table where everyone could see it. Mother smiled thinly. You came, she said. I smiled back. It's not about proving I'm right, I said evenly. It's about showing up so they remember I was always here. The murmurs quieted. Denton stared at me like he could will me back into silence. Father sipped his drink too quickly. I just stood there, breathing steady, waiting for the right moment. I slipped my phone under the table, opened the email I'd drafted last night, and pressed send. The subject line read, Monroe Estate, True Will attached. I included the full company board, family trustees, and Carlisle bricks. A soft chime confirmed it. Sent. The sound was small, but it landed like a thunderclap. Phones started buzzing across the room. Whispers rose, voices tangled. Someone asked, "Is that the will?" Another said, "Oh my God, she actually did it." Mother's hand shook as she reached for her glass. Her smile cracked. I didn't speak. Silence, I'd learned, made the guilty talk faster than any accusation. And then, the door opened. Carlisle Bricks walked in, black briefcase in hand, steady, composed. The room fell quiet as he crossed the floor and set up his laptop near the head table. He nodded once at me. No theatrics, no greeting. Just purpose. A projector flickered on, casting the document across the wall, the official will of Arthur Monroe, signed April 1st, 1996. This, Carlisle said, his voice low but commanding, is the valid last will of Arthur Monroe. It clearly names Miss Orlith Monroe as the sole heir. The air left the room. You could hear the faint buzz of the lights overhead. Denton's eyes darted. Mother's face drained of color. Father looked suddenly older, smaller. My chest tightened, but not from fear. It was release. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just breathes. Carlisle gestured to me. Miss Monroe, would you join me? I walked forward, flashes from phones lighting the path. It felt strange, familiar faces watching like strangers, waiting to see how the story would end. I faced them all. You erased me, I said, voice steady. You locked me away and rewrote the truth. But here it is, alive, in front of you. Lorna stepped out from the side of the hall, her hands trembling, eyes wet. She carried the guest book, the one she'd hidden from Mother. She passed it to Carlisle, who opened it beneath the projector. There, in faded ink, was my name, written by my grandfather himself. Denton lunged forward. You can't prove. Carlisle stopped him. I can. And I will. Under Pennsylvania law, this document supersedes any later version proven to be influenced or coerced. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some whispered. Some looked away. Mother sat down slowly, as if gravity had betrayed her. Denton clenched his fists. Father stayed frozen, eyes fixed on the floor. I didn't move. I just breathed. For years, they'd told me silence was dignity. Now I knew silence was complicity. Carlisle's voice cut through the tension. This will stands. The estate and all associated assets revert to Miss Monroe effective immediately. The words hit harder than I expected. Not because I wanted the property, but because it finally gave truth a place to live. I turned toward the podium, reached into my pocket, and placed Grandpa's carved wooden comb next to Carlisle's laptop. The lights glinted off the grain of it. The inscription, "You're stronger than you believe," caught the glow. For the first time, I understood it wasn't about comfort. It was a warning. Strength doesn't always mean surviving. Sometimes it means standing in the open when everyone's watching you burn. The crowd began to thin, the noise scattering like dust. Cameras shut off. Chairs scraped back. Mother approached me, her voice soft, breaking. Orlith. I didn't let her finish. You had your chance, I said. And you spent it pretending I didn't exist. I walked past her toward the door. Through the window, I saw Denton outside, phone pressed to his ear, speaking fast, pacing like a man who just lost the only game he ever thought he could win. I touched the comb again. You can't buy back time, I whispered. He turned, our eyes meeting through the glass. They thought tonight was the ending. But the truth, they hadn't begun to understand. I was only getting started. It's been 2 weeks. The morning light stretches across the kitchen, filtered through the stained glass we never replaced. Dust dances in the air, caught in sunlight like it has nowhere else to be. I sit at the table with Grandpa's old journal cracked open. Some pages are blank. Others filled with dates, short notes, memories he probably never meant for anyone to read. The lawsuit is gone. Dropped the day after Carlisle filed the new will publicly. Denton vanished, no press, no call. Just silence. Mother sent a letter. Handwritten. Neat, like she was trying too hard to make it look easy. I haven't opened it. Not yet. There's comfort in sweeping the same corner every day. I fix the same breakfast. Feed the same birds on the back porch. The chaos is gone, and what's left is mine. Healing doesn't mean it never hurt. It just means it no longer gets to define me. Carlisle stopped by late morning, wearing that same navy coat, briefcase in hand. He handed me the last of the paperwork with barely a word, then paused as he reached into his folder one more time. I didn't want to bring this up earlier, he said. But I think you should know your mother tried to file an amended version of the will a month ago. It was forged. I stopped it. He placed the copy on the table. I stared at it. The handwriting didn't match hers, not quite, but it tried to. It was messy, like desperation had soaked into the ink. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel much. I just nodded. Thank you for stopping it, I said. But more than that, thank you for telling me. Carlisle tapped the table gently. Closure doesn't come from a judge. Sometimes it's just the moment you realize they might never understand. I nodded again. After he left, I grabbed my coat and stepped out with the realtor waiting by the fence line. He smiled too big, said the offers were generational. Big money, fast deals. I walked the house one last time. Not like before, when I was proving something. This time, I listened. The creak in the study floorboard. The iron latch on Grandpa's tool chest. The place didn't echo anymore. It breathed. This house buried the truth, I whispered. But it also protected it. I canceled the sale. Told the realtor we wouldn't be needing his services. I don't want to keep it because it's pretty, or old, or sentimental. I want to keep it because it's mine now. Not just the deed. The story. One room at a time, I'll restore it. The wallpaper, the fireplace, the attic. Not to erase what happened, but to mark that it did, and I'm still standing. That night, I sat near the fire, Grandpa's wooden comb in my hand. The inscription worn down, but still readable. You're stronger than you believe. The flames cracked soft against the quiet. I opened the letter from Mother. It rambled. Tried to explain things she couldn't even name. There were parts one could almost feel sorry for. Parts that made me grip the comb tighter. I wrote a reply. Just one paragraph. I don't hate you. But I won't forget, either. I need space to become who I was meant to be. There was no return address. Maybe she didn't want one. Or maybe she knew better. I fed both letters to the fire and watched them curl and vanish. Forgiveness isn't about saying they were right. It's about making sure they don't get to live in your head rent-free forever. The next morning, I got a call from the local library. The grant application I filled out months ago had gone through. They invited me to start cataloging the house as part of a preservation project. History, they said, deserves a voice. For the first time, I wasn't living anyone else's script. I was writing mine. I passed the old mirror in the hallway and caught my reflection. Hair tied back, eyes steady. I whispered, "You're not broken. You're blooming." And the house, this house that once held me hostage, just breathed. That afternoon, I was going through old boxes when I heard the mail slot click. A single envelope slid in. No name. Just a postmark from Virginia. The handwriting was tight. Barely a sentence. "He didn't die the way they told you." I sat down. Breath shallow. Fingers cold. The past never stays buried, does it? It whispers.